I think the real issue is the relationship between the two, and clearly this is a government that's inherited a lot of issues about the way in which public sector delivers. It's clearly looking at it in different ways, and I think the interesting thing about both this report and the session today is how many different views are coming together to perhaps focus on the real priorities for the future.
Thank you.
Probably two things in education at the moment. One is about the reform of the system, so academies, free schools that we've heard a lot about today, whether they'll actually work, whether they'll take off, and whether we've got the capacity and resource to do that. Clearly Pearson, the organisation for which I work, is very keen on seeing this kind of diverse delivery happen. And secondly, another issue which we started here a bit about today, but very close to our hearts, is about skill levels, because skill levels are critical for productivity, and we're a great believer in the fact that we need to develop skill levels across the board and at every level. It is a great problem for a lot of people working in the education system. They're working with flat budgets, they're working with budgets that are not going to improve for some time. What this is making them do is think about ways in which they deliver, efficiency, resources and so on. But equally, as a global company, we're looking about how we can interrelate with countries abroad and perhaps develop economic systems through there. Two things probably. One, and it came up towards the end, this issue about localism, because I think education is a service that's delivered through local providers, and there's some interesting work going on there. And the other one is about productivity, and I've hinted at the importance of skills, but I think productivity is a very key issue, and it was good to see that mentioned today as well.
I think it's a timely reminder, actually, that a lot of the austerity which we've been promised over the last couple of years is still actually to be felt or to be implemented. I think this shows us that it's going to be a massive challenge for the government. I was actually taken by Bernard Jenkins' passion on civil service reform. He was talking about the fact it's been talked about for decades, and I felt it for a while when I was working for the Liberal Democrats just as we entered into government. There's clearly a very set way that civil service thinks, and it's going to be a serious challenge to change that. Absolutely. I mean, if you're looking at yesterday's Queen's speech, the Queen started by saying that it was her government's top priority, but there were very few actually sort of actions in the speech. That's partly understandable. I mean, you'd say that the economy is about much more than just government legislating for growth, but I think it's about time that there were maybe some quite drastic actions taken to start to get things moving.
Well, I think there's a huge passion amongst the speakers today to change government, to change public sector, to move things forward. Bernard Jenkins spoke about reforming the civil service, and that's obviously part of it. But Anne McAvoy said it's not just about that, it's also about ministers as well. It's this relationship between ministers and officials. And I think after 2 years of this government, that is a very good insight, and it's something that I'm sure people in government are trying to think about, are now reflecting on and wanting to put right. Well, productivity in the public sector is, as Nick Bowles said, is labour productivity, because most of the costs are in the workforce. So, as it happens, we're launching today on the day of a public sector union strike. So, there's some disquiet amongst some unions about changes to working patterns and employment and so on. Nevertheless, this is now the territory which has to be explored, and I feel much more positive about it, because where there has been evidence of successful reform, better productivity in public sector, what happens is tremendously improved morale of staff, reduced sickness, absence, better management. It is more efficient, but it's also changing these workforces for the better. So I think this productivity story, there must be more energy on it within government. Yes, and Bernard Jenkins said so much of the government's deficit reduction strategy depends on growth, tax receipts from stronger growth, and if growth is flat, that is not going to happen. And he said that the Conservative backbenchers are getting a bit jittery about that. David Cruikshank said that there is a challenge on unlocking business investment, and that's probably something we need to do more work on, perhaps reform in Deloitte. But more positively, if the public sector now directly consumes a quarter of the economy, then changes to the public sector will drive up whole economy growth, and that we have to keep hold of that thought.